My name is Rick Rogers, and I'll be talking with you today about end of instruction exams from the perspective of an Oklahoma school superintendent that I interviewed. The interview was conducted on October 5th, 2015. Senate Bill 982, otherwise known as the Achieving Classroom Excellence Act, was signed into law in 2005. It had a number of provisions in it, but one of the most impactful components of that law was that it required high school students to pass 4 out of 7 end of instruction exams to graduate from high school with a standard diploma. While the law was signed into law in 2005, it was a few years later before students were actually held to the standard of passing these tests before graduating from high school. The first affected class was the class of 2011-2012. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the impact of instructional time. If one does the math on taking into account that there are 7 end of instruction tested subjects plus a writing component, and that by law those tests must be given 3 times a year, then you can quickly add up that there's a lot of days that kids are going to be testing. In fact, the testing window runs 3 to 4 weeks in the fall and 3 to 4 weeks in the spring, and then a couple of weeks in the summer. During that time, we most often have our classroom teachers either administering or proctoring those exams. That means days out of the classroom for our highly qualified teachers. They're not providing instruction during that time. We're going to have a high number of substitute teachers that are filling those classrooms, which are they're not able to deliver the same quality of instruction that our regular classroom teachers are. Another factor to consider is that the students are not just missing an hour to take a test. These tests typically take about a half day to administer, and so they're missing 3 to 4 class periods every time they take one of these tests. The high stakes nature of the end of instruction testing has really, in the mind of the superintendent that I interviewed, and I would tend to agree, that it has shifted much of the conversation in our schools from learning to passing the test. Another thing that we talked about during my interview was resource allocation. And there are 3 things that I'd like to talk about: computers, substitute costs, and IT personnel. First of all, because the testing is done online, the computers that a school district has are almost completely tied up during that testing window. Kids who might otherwise be using them for term papers, research, and those kinds of things just don't have the same level of access to computers that they would have at other times. Substitute costs is obviously another consideration for school districts, that if teachers are out giving tests, then someone has to be there to take care of the classes in their absence. And so substitute costs is something that can really add up pretty quickly to a district when you take into account the number of times that teachers are out giving tests. IT personnel is a precious commodity in schools. Their priorities tend to be redirected toward testing support, and that they often must delay and put off other technology priorities that the district may have during the testing window. In conclusion, it was communicated to me that, in the opinion of the superintendent I interviewed, that we put too much emphasis on the end of instruction tests, that too many dollars are tied up in the testing contracts, and with the changes that have taken place that no longer allow us to give modified assessments to special needs students, that is a concern about the future impact of graduation rates and potential lawsuits that may come down as a result of those changes. Thank you.